On your knees! The words cut through the cold like a bullet, sharp and trembling. The old man didn't flinch. His breath steamed in the high-altitude air, slow and steady. Floodlights from the cruiser behind him carved his silhouette into the blackness. One hand of the officer hovered just inches from the grip of his sidearm. The other pointed a flashlight square into the man's face. "My knees gave out in Fallujah," he said, voice flat. "But go ahead." For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then, from the tree line, a voice. Clear, steady, young. "I'm filming this." Everything changed. But before we return to that moment, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Or tell us, what would you have done if you saw this happen on a quiet highway? And if stories like this matter to you, hit subscribe, hit like. We're here to bring silence to light. Now, back to Elias Monroe. Before he was a headline, before the cameras, before the world remembered. Red Pine Valley wasn't on most maps. That's the way Elias liked it. Tucked between the crags of North Terran's Black Ridge Mountains, the town had one grocery store, 2 bars, and no traffic lights. People passed each other with nods, not names. It was a place built for forgetting. And Elias Monroe had mastered the art. 20 years had passed since he turned in his badge, walked off the base at Camp Asher, and disappeared. Once a chief investigator in the JAG Corps, Judge Advocate General, Elias had handled the kind of cases that never reached courtrooms. Quiet cover-ups, internal monsters. Uniforms hiding what the Constitution would have damned. But then came that boy. 15, unarmed, dead in a detention unit in the desert. The boy's name was Marcus Jem, Silas's younger brother. He'd been caught with a cell phone in the detention unit, a violation, but hardly a death sentence. The official report claimed medical complications during routine questioning. But Elias had seen the bruises, had photographed them, had interviewed the guards who wouldn't meet his eyes. The evidence was overwhelming. Assault, negligence, possibly murder. But Marcus wasn't just any detainee. His death had occurred during a classified operation, one that involved contractors, off-the-books interrogations, and methods that would have made headlines if they'd ever seen daylight. Elias remembered the phone call that changed everything. The voice was calm, professional. No threats, just facts. "Colonel Monroe, your daughter Sarah is a sophomore at State University, isn't she? Studying journalism? Such a promising young woman. It would be unfortunate if certain funding issues affected her scholarship." The line went dead. Elias stared at the phone for 20 minutes. Then he deleted the file. He'd told himself it was about protecting Sarah. But late at night, in the silence of his cabin, he knew the truth. He'd been a coward, and Marcus Jem had paid the price for his cowardice. Elias had the truth in hand, boxed in sealed evidence bags. He even typed up the recommendation for charges. And then, one phone call changed it all. "If this leaks, your testimony won't be the only thing buried in sand." Elias never pressed send. He left. Now, age 72, he lived in a cabin behind a tree line no GPS could find. His back was stiff, his hands shook some mornings. But the hardest part was sleeping near silence. Silence reminded him of the boy's name, of his own name. On this particular evening, Elias was driving back from a funeral. His ex-wife, Lena. They hadn't spoken in 10 years, but he went, sat in the back, didn't say a word. A sealed envelope lay on the passenger seat. No return address. The only thing written on it: "You were there, but you left. I'm still here." S. The road out of red pine curved along the ridge like a scar. Tall pines lined its edges, whispering in the wind like they knew things. Elias's sedan hummed along at a modest pace, 43 miles per hour. Steady, deliberate, like the man behind the wheel. It was past midnight. Fog clung to the edges of his headlights. Gravel crunched under worn tires. He didn't notice the headlights until they were already behind him. Red and blue. Too close. No siren. Then, chirp, a quick flash of lights. A command, not a courtesy. Elias eased onto the shoulder without panic. His hands were already at 10 and 2 when the cruiser door opened. Out stepped a young officer, not more than 30. Thin frame, too eager in the way he walked. Name tag, Vex. Elias rolled down the window. Cool air swept in, smelling like dust and pine sap. "Evening, officer," he said evenly. No reply. Vex pointed his flashlight directly into Elias's eyes. "License and registration." No explanation, no greeting. Elias blinked once, slow. "May I ask why I'm being stopped?" Vex stopped chewing his gum. His jaw ticked. "License, registration." The tone wasn't bored. It was challenging. Elias moved slowly. Reaching into my coat. Right side. No sudden motions. Years of muscle memory from traffic stops gone wrong. He pulled out his wallet and flipped it open. 2 cards. His driver's license and a worn military ID. It was faded but clear. Lieutenant Colonel Rechonker, Military Police. Vex's eyes flicked over them, then narrowed. "This supposed to mean something to me?" Elias didn't answer. He didn't need to. Vex leaned closer. "Step out of the vehicle." Silence. Elias turned, just slightly. "On what grounds?" Vex's hand hovered by his holster. "Do I need to repeat myself?" The flashlight beam began to shake slightly. Not from the wind, from adrenaline. "I've complied," Elias said, voice still steady. "And unless I'm under arrest, I'm remaining in the vehicle." The officer took one step back, unclipped the holster latch. A soft click, loud as thunder in the empty woods. That's when Elias knew. This wasn't a stop. This was a message, and someone had sent it. From the shadows beyond the tree line, someone else knew it too. Ray Toma wasn't supposed to be out this late, but her dad's old truck broke down near the old forestry road. She'd stepped out to get a signal when she saw the lights. Then she saw the gun. And the old man. Calm. Too calm. Ray Toma was 19, a community college student studying digital media. She'd grown up in foster care, bounced between homes that ranged from indifferent to cruel. She'd learned early that adults with authority couldn't always be trusted, that sometimes the only protection was evidence. Her phone wasn't just a device, it was her weapon. She documented 3 incidents of abuse in her last foster home, evidence that finally got her removed and placed with a family that actually cared. She'd filmed her high school principal making inappropriate comments to female students, footage that led to his resignation. Ray understood something that many people her age didn't. The camera didn't lie. People did. Institutions did. But video was truth, raw and undeniable. When she saw the old man's calm dignity in the face of obvious intimidation, something in her chest tightened. This was her grandfather, who died when she was 12. This was every veteran who'd been forgotten, dismissed, treated like a problem instead of a person. She kept filming even when her hands shook. Even when Officer Vex's eyes found her in the darkness. Even when she realized that this moment might change everything. She hit record without thinking. From across the clearing, her voice broke the scene. "I'm filming this." Vex froze. The flashlight beam jerked. His head snapped toward the source of the voice. then back to Elias. Elias turned slightly. Not enough to provoke, just enough to register. A witness. The odds had shifted, but not the danger. Another car approached. Older, a pickup, loud engine. It parked behind Ray's truck. Out stepped a man in boots and a battered army jacket. Gray in his beard, anger in his walk. Elias saw him, and recognition hit like a fist. Silas Jem, brother of the boy from Camp Asher. They hadn't seen each other in 2 decades, but nothing had changed in Silas's eyes. Still that mix of grief and rage. "You didn't think I'd come," Silas called out. Vex barked, "Back up! This is a lawful stop!" Silas didn't flinch. He walked toward Ray. "Keep rolling, girl. Don't stop for nothing." Elias said nothing, but inside something shifted. This wasn't revenge. Not yet, but it could be. Vex's stance widened, both hands now visible, one clenching the flashlight, the other twitching near the holster like it had a mind of its own. His voice cracked under the pressure. "I said, everybody back up. This man is non-compliant." Elias exhaled through his nose. That word. He'd heard it in reports, seen it ruin reputations. Non-compliant. The shield used when facts were too inconvenient. Silas leaned against Ray's truck, arms crossed. "What's he non-compliant about, kid? Breathing?" Ray didn't speak. Her phone stayed up, steady, unblinking. Vex's face flushed red. He turned back to Elias, spitting words now. "Get out, or I'll drag you out." And Elias, finally, spoke. Low, slow, slicing through the chaos like a bayonet. "You're not the first to aim a gun at me for the truth, but you might be the last." For a moment, silence reigned. Even the wind stopped to listen. Another car approached. Not a cruiser. A dark SUV, government plates. Sheriff Jody Merritt. She stepped out alone. No siren, no rush. Her uniform was pristine, pressed flat. But her eyes, flat, exhausted, or worse, resigned. Sheriff Jody Merritt had been in law enforcement for 18 years. She'd started as a deputy with ideals, believing she could make a difference. But the system had worn her down, one compromise at a time. The call had come 3 hours earlier, a voice she recognized but couldn't place, speaking in the careful language of people who never left fingerprints. "Sheriff, we have a situation developing on Highway 9. A certain veteran is asking questions about old cases, questions that might disturb some very important people. Officer Vex will handle it, but we need to ensure there are no complications." Merritt had wanted to refuse, should have refused, but her department's budget was already stretched thin, and certain federal grants had been conditional on cooperation with national security interests. She'd told herself she was just observing, making sure things didn't get out of hand. But when she saw the cameras, when she heard the voices in the darkness, she realized she'd become part of something she couldn't control. Standing in the floodlights, watching Elias Monroe refuse to break, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Shame. Deep, burning shame for what she'd allowed herself to become. She didn't approach Vex. She didn't greet Elias. She just watched, like this wasn't her fight, like it was already decided. Vex glanced back at her. "Sheriff, he's resisting." Merritt said nothing. That was all the permission he needed. His hand moved, not to his weapon, but to Elias's car door handle. Click. Elias's arm shot out, grabbing the doorframe, holding it shut. "You touch that door again," he said, not raising his voice, "and you'll answer for more than a traffic stop." The muscles in Vex's jaw flexed. He looked at Merritt again. Nothing. Elias leaned slightly forward. "What's your directive, Deputy? Who told you to stop me tonight? Was it her Or someone higher up? No answer. Ray's voice cut through. We're live streaming, just FYI. She wasn't, but Vex didn't know that, and suddenly he backed off. Just an inch. Just enough to register. The mask had cracked, but it was too late, because now the forest had eyes, and the internet had teeth. Silas stepped forward, not toward Vex, but toward Elias. You remember my brother? Elias met his eyes. Yes. You remember what you said to me in that hangar? You said, I'll see it through. Elias nodded. I meant it, until they told me the cost. And you picked yourself over the truth. A pause. A long, bitter pause. Elias answered with honesty that cut deeper than denial. I did. Silas looked down, jaw clenched, then handed Ray a thumb drive from his coat pocket. Everything we collected, Camp Asher, eyewitness accounts. I was going to leak it myself. Ray took it carefully, her phone still trained on Vex. Then Silas looked to Elias. But I thought, maybe you'd still know how. Vex, hearing all this, exploded. This is obstruction. All of you. You're interfering with a lawful... And then the third cruiser pulled up. 2 officers stepped out, guns holstered but eyes sharp. One wore a silver lieutenant's bar on his collar. He didn't ask questions. He assessed. The phones. The witnesses. The old man standing tall. The deputy trembling. Someone explain this, the lieutenant said. Elias didn't wait. He stepped forward slowly, hands raised, not in surrender, but in clarity. My name is Elias Monroe, he said. Retired Lieutenant Colonel, Military Police Investigative Division, 25 years of service. This man, he nodded toward Vex, attempted to forcibly remove me from my vehicle with no stated cause and unclipped his weapon in front of 2 civilians. Everything you need is on that phone and that drive. The lieutenant turned to Vex. Is this true? Vex's lips parted, then closed. No script, no help. He looked at Sheriff Merritt, still silent. That was the last straw. The lieutenant nodded once. Disarm him! One of the officers stepped forward and took Vex's sidearm. It was over. Not loud, not violent, just over. But for Elias Monroe, it was only just beginning. They took Vex aside. No cuffs. Not yet. The lieutenant asked him to sit on the hood of the cruiser and not say a word. Vex obeyed, face burning with the heat of failure and exposure. Ray finally lowered her phone. Her arms ached, but she didn't stop recording. Not yet. Elias stood in the middle of it all, headlights casting long shadows around his boots. The air was thick with pine and something unspoken, the weight of a reckoning long overdue. Sheriff Merritt approached him slowly, her face unreadable. You made this a spectacle, she said. Elias turned to her, calm. No, Sheriff, your man did. I just refused to disappear. She didn't answer, only looked past him at Ray and Silas, and something flickered in her expression. Not fear, not shame, something colder. Calculation. I'd be careful, she said finally. No one likes a martyr who keeps receipts. Then she walked away. The lieutenant turned to Elias. We'll need a formal statement. You'll get one, Elias replied, then looked at Ray. You have a copy of that video? She nodded, silently holding up her phone. Silas pulled the truck door open and slid inside. You coming? He asked Elias. Elias didn't move right away. He just stood there, staring down at the gravel beneath his feet. The same kind of ground he'd walked across in the Middle East. Silent, uncertain, unforgiving. Then he looked up, not at the cops, not at Ray, but at the trees, at the place beyond headlights. I buried it for too long, he whispered. Time to unearth it right. and he stepped into Silas's truck. The next morning, the video was everywhere. Not viral, alive. Screens lit up across towns that didn't know Red Pine Valley existed. Military circles passed it like a quiet salute. It wasn't just the footage. It was the weight behind it. The way Elias stood. The way he didn't flinch. The way he didn't beg. And the look on Vex's face when the badge stopped meaning immunity. By noon, reporters were camped outside the sheriff's office. Sheriff Merritt held a press conference with the enthusiasm of someone forced to swallow glass. We're reviewing the incident. We respect our veterans. We take allegations of misconduct seriously. All the phrases, none of the conviction. But it didn't matter, because the world had already drawn its conclusion. The lieutenant who intervened, his name was Lieutenant Corin, quietly submitted a formal report that included words rarely seen in police paperwork. The civilian displayed calm, lawful resistance to an unlawful order. The deputy in question escalated without cause. The presence of citizen witnesses prevented potential tragedy. That last sentence, it stuck, because everyone knew what potential tragedy meant. Ray was invited to 3 news stations. She declined all of them. Instead, she uploaded her raw video to a clean YouTube channel titled Truthline, filmed, not forgotten. No ads, no filters, just her voice saying, "He didn't run, he didn't yell, he just stood. And because he stood, we could stand with him." The comments flooded in. "My grandfather served. This broke me. This is why we film. This is why we show up. We need 1,000 Elias Monroes." And then came the emails, the messages, stories from other vets, from families, from towns like Red Pine, from people who never had a Ray or a Silas or a camera, just pain and silence. Elias read every single one. In the quiet of his cabin, he printed the messages out and stacked them on the table like case files. Each one, a voice. Each one, a chance. Silas showed up again 2 nights later with a folding chair and a thermos of black coffee. "I've got a cousin in Larchwood," he said. "Sheriff's office there covers up DUI stops for a councilman. Girl's in the hospital. Nobody's talking." Elias didn't respond immediately. He just looked at the map on his wall. Pinned along the state line were names, places, rumors, and one word written in red Sharpie at the top: Field Watch. "You going?" Silas asked. Elias didn't look away from the map. "Someone has to," he said. Weeks passed. Not the kind you count with calendars. The kind that build pressure beneath skin, behind headlines, between breaths. Field Watch wasn't announced. It wasn't branded. It simply began. A borrowed RV, a generator, 3 volunteers. Elias, Ray, Silas. They didn't wear uniforms. They didn't carry badges. They carried flashlights, field recorders, and the stubborn resolve of people who had already lost too much to pretend silence ever saved anyone. The Field Watch movement grew organically, like wildfire in dry grass. Within 6 months, there were 17 active units across 12 states. Each team was small, 3 to 5 people maximum. Veterans, journalists, activists, ordinary citizens who decided that silence was no longer an option. They had no central command, no official funding. Equipment was donated or bought with pooled resources. Transportation was whatever they could manage. Borrowed RVs, personal vehicles, sometimes just public transportation and shoe leather. But they had something more powerful than money: credibility. When Elias Monroe walked into a room, people listened. His military bearing, his obvious integrity, his willingness to admit his own failures. It all combined to create a presence that cut through cynicism and fear. The methodology was simple but effective. They would arrive in a community, set up in a neutral location, and simply wait. No grand announcements, no media blitz, just a sign. Field Watch. Your story matters. The stories came slowly at first. A mother whose son had died in police custody. A veteran denied medical care. A family destroyed by a corrupt judge. Each testimony was recorded, verified when possible, and shared with the world. But Field Watch wasn't just about exposure. They connected victims with lawyers, journalists, advocacy groups. They provided emotional support, practical assistance, and most importantly, they bore witness. They said, "We see you. We believe you. You are not alone." Their first stop was Larchwood, a town too small for stop signs, but big enough for buried secrets. They set up in a school gym, folded chairs, warm coffee, open mic. They didn't advertise. They just waited, and they came. A nurse, a mechanic, a girl in a hoodie who spoke in fragments and tears. Elias didn't take notes. He just listened, really listened. And when she finished, he said 6 words that would become Field Watch's quiet motto. "That shouldn't have happened. We heard you." Ray edited the footage that night. No filters, no music, no edits, just voices. Voices America wasn't hearing anywhere else. She uploaded the video, titled it, "Day 1, 2 million views in 5 days. The inbox exploded. But Elias didn't chase views. He chased truth, even when it cut him open. One night, while Ray was asleep and Silas was repairing the side mirror, Elias sat alone in the back of the RV. In his lap was a worn envelope, not the first one. Another letter had arrived. This one was printed, typed, signed. "My name is Dana Abadi. My brother died in Camp Asher, and I heard you were the one who closed that case. I wanted to hate you. I still might. But I saw the video, and for what it's worth, I'm glad you're not done fighting." Elias didn't cry. Not the way people cry when they're broken. He just closed his eyes and breathed, like the air itself was letting him stay. A month later, they returned to Red Pine Valley, not to rest, to testify. Lieutenant Corin had pushed for a full inquiry into the sheriff's department. Vex had been suspended. Merritt was under state review. Elias sat before a committee of stone-faced officials, suits, clipboards, prepared to dissect him. But he gave them nothing scripted, no grandstanding. He told them what happened, what he saw, what nearly happened, had Ray not spoken. And he ended with this. "When I wore the uniform, I was taught that silence protects the mission. But I learned too late. Silence also protects the wrong people. You want to fix this? Don't just punish the noise. Punish the silence that let it build." The room didn't clap. It wasn't that kind of moment. But something shifted, and the shift didn't stop. 2 years later, Elias Monroe sits in a congressional hearing room. The subject, police accountability and veteran affairs. He's not the only witness. There are others, people whose stories Field Watch helped bring to light. But he's the one the cameras focus on. The man who stood his ground on a dark highway and refused to disappear. "Mr. Monroe," says the committee chair, "what would you say to those who argue that movements like Field Watch undermine law enforcement and military institutions?" Elias adjusts his glasses, looks directly at the camera, and speaks in the same calm voice that cut through the darkness that night. "I'd say that institutions are only as strong as the people who serve them. And when those people choose silence over truth, comfort over courage, they don't protect the institution. They poison it." He pauses, thinking of Marcus Jem. of Ray Toma, of all the voices that had been silenced before someone finally listened. Real strength isn't in the uniform or the badge or the rank. It's in the willingness to stand up when standing up costs something, to speak when speaking is dangerous, to remember that our oath isn't to protect the powerful, it's to protect the truth. The hearing room is silent. Then, slowly, applause begins. Not the polite clapping of official proceedings, but something deeper. Recognition, respect, hope. Later, outside the Capitol building, Ray approaches him with her ever-present camera. "Any final thoughts?" she asks. Elias looks up at the building behind them, then back at the camera. "We're not done," he says simply. "We're just getting started." The screen fades to black. Then, white text appears. Fieldwatch continues to operate in communities across America. If you have a story that needs to be heard, they're listening. If you want to help, they need you. Because in the end, democracy isn't a spectator sport. Your voice matters. Use it. Today, Fieldwatch has no headquarters, no hierarchy, just outposts, coffee shops, church basements, American Legion halls. They show up with gear and questions. They leave with footage and wounds. But the stories stay, and so do the people. The last scene is this. Elias sits at a metal table under a carport outside a gas station in Thorn Hollow. He's sipping tea from a paper cup. Ray is plugging in camera cables. Silas is asleep with a newspaper over his face. A boy, maybe 10, walks up, curiosity written all over him. "Hey, mister," he says, "were you really in the army?" Elias nods. "Long time ago." "Did you ever fight?" Elias pauses, looks at Ray, then back at the boy. "I still do," he says, and the camera fades. If you felt something in this story, if Elias reminded you of someone, or if Ray reminded you of you, leave a comment below. We read every single one. Wherever you're watching from, you matter. And if you believe the quiet should be heard, subscribe. We'll keep showing up, so they won't be forgotten.